Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of the Players NIL podcast, Industry Insider podcast. And my industry insider today is Caitlin Gardner. Caitlin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm excited to dive into this discussion. I have to share with the audience that I was told that I'm not allowed to have any pop quizzes on sports or pop culture around sports. And then we open up the window and I see a football and a basketball behind you. So I'm going to start with, what are those memorabilia pieces?
Well, I had the pleasure of attending the University of Florida during back-to-back national championship basketball and football. It was a great era, and it was actually a really important part of my marketing and branding foundation because I was able to be inspired by top performing athletes, this playing to win mindset. Sometimes we were the underdog, and we really were able to bring it. So I was really grateful to have that be part of my collegiate experience.
Yeah, I guess that's why people go to those big schools, right? That's why the enrollment's up at Alabama and Florida and Tennessee and all those great football programs. Well, Caitlin Gardner, you're an entrepreneur now. You started
Yes.
your own company, Blooming Communication, and it's about leadership and branding and storytelling and all those things that we're going to get into. But I warned you, I'm going to ask you the first question. What does personal brand mean to you?
Well, I take this very seriously because a personal brand is something that carries with you throughout your career, and this becomes your legacy, your brand reputation. And when I work with executives and leaders, their company may change or their role may shift over their career, but their reputation carries with them, and that personal brand can evolve. But I always tell people to make sure they're putting deposits into that brand reputation and their personal brand reputation bank account, because when they put deposits in through positivity and a lot of the lessons that you share, that is great because they can cash in on those deposits when the time is right as their career may evolve. And having a strong, clear personal brand is really something they should cherish and be intentional about.
I love deposits and withdrawals. I saw that you've written about that and talked about that a lot. So give me an example of some deposits. What can young people do, college age people do to build up equity in their personal brand?
Exactly. I talk to a lot of university students and I tell them that the people that are in the classrooms today could be the decision maker hiring them in the future. The
Mhm.
opponent across them, the field from them could be somebody who they have a partnership with as their career blossoms in the future. So you never know when someone's going to notice you across the room and they're going to be a decision maker that could influence you, hire you, endorse you if that feels right. And the reputation and relationships that you're building now are really important. So to always show up with clarity and kindness, I think those are table stakes to be someone that a future prospect could like and hire in the future. But then you need to add to that and build upon that likability, but also be strategic, offer value, be resourceful. So all of these things are really important, and I think students should always lean into that.
Great answer. How do you teach intentionality? How do you tell young people to be intentional? What does it mean, and how do you guide them? What examples do you bring to the table?
Well, I think being intentional is also being authentic to who you are.
Mhm.
I was talking to some students at a NCAA Division One level just a few weeks ago, and they were talking about that they're just so focused on the now. They're not focused on the future, and that wasn't a bad thing. Not a knock at them at all, but they need to make sure that they show up at practice. Their travel schedule is so intense. They're not thinking about what's next. They're thinking about tomorrow. They're thinking about dressing up and getting on the field or playing on the court the next day. And that's okay to be in that very self-preservation moment because that's where they need to focus. So when I was talking about like long-term plans or internships or postgraduate, they were like, actually, that's not where my focus is. And it was a good reality check for me to meet them where they are. They're in the now. They need to have peak performance at the game tomorrow, and they need to focus on winning this season. And what the future holds, or if they're going to go pro, those are big question marks for them. So they're not thinking beyond that, and that's okay. So, how can we help show up for them now? And that looks like, providing social media content for them, helping support them where they are. Maybe some of them were interested in having a marketing or PR person help support them in terms of creating content for them because they're like, I can't, my head's in the game. If my head was on social media, that would be different. But how am I supposed to show up with a personal brand if I'm supposed to be worrying about peak performance on the field? So we talked about some strategies there. So in terms of intentionality, I think right now athletes need to focus on performance and finding the right team members who help them in the background that may help them through their personal brand strategy.
Yeah, I found the same thing. I agree with you. We're pretty short-term vision this
Mm-hmm.
generation. And I get that. There's a lot going on. I mean, you just think about the information overload on a daily basis, whether it
Yeah.
be social media or digital content or classroom or coaches.
Yeah.
It's really a challenge. And what we try to do with the players NIL is we try to look out into the future as far as you can. And I ask this rhetorical question all the time. What does success look like to you?
Mm-hmm.
5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And most of them hadn't thought about it, right?
Mm-mm.
And then what are the intentional milestones that you need to achieve
Right.
to get there? And I found that my best communication is when I share that I'm going to fill in the first two milestones. They want to graduate and they want to get a job. Now, maybe at the highest level, they're thinking about professional sports.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have this vision of success down the road, how do you decipher what part of the day, how much time did you put deposits into the short term versus the long term? How do you become intentional? That's what I struggle with in trying to get their attention. Can you give me any suggestions or tips and tricks of how to keep them engaged in both the short term, which is important to them, and the long term, which we know at some point they're going to wish that they paid more attention to?
Yeah, I think that's right. One of my clients played elite boys ice hockey, and he went to a prep school for this, and there was a very competitive environment. But a lot of the lessons that he learned carry with him into his professional financial career. Let me talk about some of those. Number one is it's always a team sport, right? How can you make sure that you're playing and collaborating with the right players? One thing that this man is he's very coachable. He wants to find someone who's doing it really well and listen to them and learn from them. He's not afraid. His ego's not so big that he's not coachable. So being coachable, I think, is such an important skill that carries with from peewees all the way to college to beyond to the pros and into your professional career. If you're not coachable, if your ego's so big that you can't even hear somebody giving you good constructive feedback, you need to probably check your ego a little bit because being coachable is such an important skill.
Mm.
He's also very strategic. This man had an opportunity to go to a massive business meeting. All of the international leaders were gathering, and him and I sat down just for a few minutes and said, "What is your game plan going into this meeting?" And once I put it in that terminology, he was like, "Okay, right. Who are the leaders you want to meet? You're not just showing up to this conference, but you're really showing up with intention and goals. And maybe you don't hit all of them, but you kind of do your research, do your homework, know who's out there." And he was able to shake the hand of a managing director. He was able to network with some of the peers across the country that he probably wouldn't have been able to do if he just showed up to this event. But he came in with a game plan and was able to execute on that and stand out in a really good way.
I think that's the
Another,
that's the answer to the intentional question. I love that, right?
yeah. And the other thing that he learned that he carries with him from ice hockey into professionalism is he passionately plays his position. I always tell people it doesn't matter if you're the intern, if you're starting out, if you're the, water boy, if you're just, JV right now, passionately play that position because the sportsmanship that you play and that people who are decision makers are noticing from you is so important. And when you can passionately play your position, no matter what it is, the next role will come. And people who get to see you in that environment really help you understand. So, as a business owner, for me, I carry that too. What is my niche? What do I work on? And how do I show up always with that passion and being glad to be here as part of the team?
Yeah, great advice. I mean, there's all kinds of great sound bites coming off of that. So one of the things that I struggle with also in leadership is, how to teach these kids to go through adversity.
Mm,
Many of them have not, right? They've been the celebrated athletes since they were 8 years old.
mm,
They've gotten every break, every coach has given them a pass. The parents celebrate them.
mm.
Many of these kids got a trophy every Saturday morning just for waking up, right? So they just think life is all about wins. You had some personal adversity in your career
Yeah.
recently, and you've turned into an entrepreneur. But I want to understand, how did that experience, how did that adversity change you? and how do you think about it today now that you're an entrepreneur? Is it in your head? Do you think about that often? What was that transformation like?
Yeah, well, I didn't play college athletes. I always knew because I did play softball in high school and I varsityed on bowling. I understood that failure is part of the equation. But
Mhm.
the art of failing forward is really the interesting aspect. And I needed to get some wins. And I was also high performance academically. And I constantly put myself in situations where maybe my shoes were a little too big. So I had to grow into them.
Mm.
So when I showed up and I failed for the first time, and sometimes I felt embarrassed or hurt or rejected, and those
Mm.
feelings are very valid, you can harness that energy. So my formula is helping others when I'm feeling low. So when I'm feeling really low or feeling rejected, I try to figure out how can I find someone else who may benefit from the skills that I have. So if that means coaching and cheering someone else on, mentoring and inspiring someone else, those lessons actually compound for me and help me along. Being a graceful loser, if you will, or failing forward, or being able to say, gosh, what is my part in this? What can I learn from this? Having accountability to say, maybe I wasn't at my number one spot right now, but I do recognize that I'm going to fail forward is great. Also, being able to move on quickly and identifying that, hey, rejection stings, feel those feelings because that's valid. And when you get a loss, whatever that could be, how do you figure out what the next path looks like and being able to find the tribe and find the circle that really wants to celebrate you because the right team is out there for you. You just need to find it.
It's about attitude, I guess, right?
A little bit of attitude and outlook for sure, optimism, but also accountability, I think, is the
Mm.
hard miss because I have friends who went through similar things and they're still victim mindset. And maybe
Mm.
they're feeling like, oh, this happened to me. Sure, it happened. It happens to a lot of people. And to clarify for listeners, we're talking about being rejected from a position, being downsized, reduction in force. Maybe you lost a client or lost a contract that you thought you were going to get. You got, I remember one time very vividly. I played JV softball and I was young at the time, but there was just a varsity player who was better than me. And we were up against a big competitor and they asked me to give my jersey to a varsity player who was the right age that could play the position. Man, did that sting, right? Here I am, 15 years old. I had to give off my jersey to a different player and she was better than me and she could play the opponent better and it hurt. I cried in the dugout there with my team, but they all rallied around me and said, but this is the team. Like, this is what we need to do. And you're such an important player right now. And here's what that looks like. But I had to realize that it's not about me. It's about the team. It's the greater good. And what can I do? I wasn't as good as her. Hey, that's
Yeah.
okay. How do I still bring cheer or joy or celebrate or strategy or support? Because that's what my strength was. I knew I wasn't going to be an athlete, but the game and the team mindset is what I learned from that lesson just at 14 or 15 years old.
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, one of our principles of the business is how do you use athletics to better your life? It doesn't mean you have to be the superstar, right? It's
That's
these
right.
skills, these soft skills that you develop. I mean, clearly you were raised properly and you had good attitude about things, but still those experiences probably helped you down the road when you had professional challenges.
It's true. I think the anticipation when you're high performance and you're used to being celebrated and winning, it's hard. It's actually probably harder to get your first loss after you've been celebrated and you've built yourself up or other people have done that. That's a lot of pressure, right? Expect the failure. Expect it. How are you going to fail forward? So again, attitude is part of it, but just anticipating it. And the same translates to the workforce. One of my favorite things to think about is if you have a 1 minute manager and they're really fast and they're throwing things at you, how do you be the 59-second employee? You're always one step ahead of them. And when you can anticipate your boss's needs, when you can add value and impact, and again, it's less about you and more about anticipating, like, I'm going to fail, but how do you fail forward and say, hey, if this doesn't work out, how do I learn from this? Take accountability, bounce back quickly, get your head back in the game, figure out if you're playing at the right field, move on quickly.
The 59-second
Employee.
employee and failing forward. Those are my two takeaways from that part of the conversation. I love it. It's great. I want to get into an advice section here before we
Mm-hmm.
wrap up. Um, I teach and I preach, and I believe that LinkedIn is one of the best, most amazing business tools ever created.
Mm-hmm.
And I think young people today need to learn how to take advantage of it. That's my opinion. That's what I teach. Um, You can disagree with me or you can agree with me, but you talk about LinkedIn, right? So
Mhm.
you must have some feelings about it. What is your advice to young people on how to approach LinkedIn, how to create a successful LinkedIn profile, and what the messaging should be? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think just like showing up with authenticity is really important. Making sure that have a good headshot, you have good cover image. The basic foundation of a LinkedIn is really important. I just taught a class this past summer where we actually encouraged students to create that. And some of them felt like, I don't have enough here. And that's okay. You just got to get started, right? Just go ahead and post something, make sure that you're polished and you're showing up the way you think employers want to see you. But I would extend that beyond LinkedIn. The digital footprint is such an important aspect for all athletes, college students in general, even if you're not athletic, because this again carries with you. So make sure that you're putting out there what you want people to receive. Part of your brand could be that you are aggressive on the field or that you are a top peak performer, but how do you carry those lessons back to academic performance or professional polish? And being intentional there is really important. So get the programs up, get the platforms up. LinkedIn is helpful professionally, but I also work with a lot of athletes or influencers who need to use other channels too. So maybe they're using Instagram or TikTok. Those are popular right now. YouTube is another one. And being consistent and having your personal brand across all of the appropriate platforms is really important. I would caution students, no matter what level, to think that things are hidden or private. They are not. In fact, even if you have settings that may dictate that, people are taking screenshots now. You want to polish up your professional digital footprint on all channels because your reputation again carries with you. Your team may change, you may elevate to another role, and then eventually you're going to find the professional aspect, and you want to make sure you're always buttoned up and polished across all platforms.
Yeah, that's great advice. I agree with that. And it takes practice, right? It's hard to do. But consistency is important and evolve, right? Don't be afraid to go back and change something on the profile that updated, perhaps.
I'm glad you mentioned practice because one other thing I wanted to share with your readers is maybe they're doing fundraising for their school, or maybe they're in the PTA or there's a booster club for their program at a high school level or even in a college level. When you can offer value to a local business as a micro influencer, this is the introduction to letting you be marketable for NIL. So I worked with a local ice cream shop here in town where I am in the Tampa, Florida area, and they're looking for micro influencers who can just share stuff on social media. Maybe you have a local barber shop or a salon that you go to often. How can you offer value to them? And this is the foundation to be able to share things with small businesses, which lead into that. I actually have a formula I'd like to share if you'd be open to that.
Absolutely.
So if you're good at fundraising, which I know all of our college sports are doing different things, that's a good skill. If you can learn how to sell and say, hey, this is for the greater good, that's the foundation for the salesmanship needed to have a personal brand. This is the formula and the sentence. And if you're a parent or if you're a student athlete, here's some things to think about. If you go to a small business, again, you already have a relationship with them, you go there frequently, maybe it's a diner or a salon. The thought is, what would it look like if I helped you promote your brand? Could we work together on something that's mutually beneficial to increase your reach, leveraging my platform? So, again, mutually beneficial, good for the business and for the athlete. And it gets the athlete experience and reps and can practice this type of thing. So that's what I would give advice to the students or to their parents.
Well, I think it fits perfectly because statistically, they say that 80% of all NIL deals are based on social media and 65% are based on local business relationships. So,
Right.
it's not, the median NIL deal in the first half of 2025, which means half the deals were greater, half the deals were less, was $55.
I think that's right. Micro influencers are an important aspect. Brands that I work with right now, including consumer packaged goods, retail, and e-commerce brands, are all looking for super niche micro influencers. Maybe they don't have hundreds and thousands of followers, but they have the right market in the right city and have influence. And every brand wants to reach the next generation, which the athletes represent authentically.
Yeah, and
This is a
athletes
big
engage.
opportunity.
And the athlete engagement typically is much greater than a traditional influencer, right? Because of the authenticity and the connection to the audience.
And then you build on it, right? So
Yeah.
getting your first deal with a local salon or a barber that you work with, they say, hey, I'm going to give you this. Can you, what does that look like for our relationship? Then you take that and say, I have a model now and I'm going to go bigger and I'm going to get more. And you grow just like you do an athletic career. You keep getting your reps in and you keep growing and you peak performance at the end.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great advice and I love your formula. It's absolutely true. Okay, here's my last question. Put your crystal ball in front of you and rub it nice and look into the future. Where are college athletes? Where's public relations? Where's personal brand? Where's technology play into it? What do you see coming down the pike?
Well, I think at this intersection of AI and technology and the human touch will continue to collide. And I think there needs to be a desire to lean into technology, be able to use it effectively. Things are going to become produced faster. Visuals are going to become easier to create, but also easier to say, hey, that's not real or that wasn't authentic. There's a lot of deep fakes out there, and I think AI is important, and being able to learn how to use that is vital. I also feel that the human touch is really important. In-person events, playing on the field, showing up for photo ops, autograph and personal connections is going to be really interesting. So I think that there's going to be a lot more entertainment value and the showmanship of being and showing up in person is not just about performing on the field. It's about the halo effect around that. And showing up in person is going to continue to be how athletes and personas and influencers in general need to polish, because the in-person experience is going to be the coveted ticket, because technology and web-based things are important, but they need to be complemented by the in-person.
Wow, great advice. I love that. Super. Caitlin Gardner, Blooming Communications. Where can we find you? Tell us about your business. What did I miss? Would you like to share before we say goodbye?
Thank you. So, Blooming Communications is a PR agency, and I also speak professionally about high stakes communication, helping executives and leaders show up with clarity. And I do that around the world. And you can find me on LinkedIn at Caitlin Gardner. And I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. I think, you touched on a lot of things. I found, like with TED Talks, for instance, I'm a big Simon Sinek
Hmm.
follower. And I often listen to him and I get mad at myself because he doesn't say anything that I didn't already know, but he says it in a way that resonates with me. And I think that's what you gave us today. Some commonsensical approach, maybe a little bit different version of it, but great leadership lessons. And I thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
Yes, thank you. And your athletes and their parents can reach out to me. I have a team of people who can help us figure out what is your strategy? How do you want to show up? And these are fun things we love to help support, and we love to do that.
Great. Well, thank you for being the guest. Have a great day.
Thank you.